So content is king is a famous phrase by a famous man that has nothing to do with open source. It's actually something that Bill Gates said once. So Bill Gates, Microsoft, one way, Drupal, a different way. So I decided to take that in, maybe just from, to add a bit of an irony, I suppose, to the whole presentation. So this is me leading the design team at Monsoon Consulting. We're based in Ireland, and we do a lot of e-commerce work and content work. We're an e-commerce and content agency. We do everything from kind of discovery, design, into building, delivery, digital marketing. So as full service as we can be. What to expect in this presentation, a lot of layers, not really design layers, but more like angles into what we did. Aha moments. So during the project, we had loads of those. You know, when you dive into a problem and then you have a moment where you say, aha, this is it, which is followed closely by, oh shit, this is actually not working. Then, you know, a lot more problem solving and a lot more deep diving, and then hoo-hoo, bragging at the end of it. So this is, I suppose, because you're all involved in projects here, you really understand probably this cycle as well as I do. We use a lot of Post-its. We'll kind of have a love affair with Post-its. We have loads of them around the office. We don't have paint on the walls. We have Post-its. It actually looks quite good. We used that wall for this project in particular, and then we never took down the, so it still sits in the office as a wall art. Just a bit of a background into what I'm going to present today. It's a local government platform, digital platform, website, if you will, that we designed, developed in Drupal and launched, I think, the middle of last year, and then quickly dive into the intranet. So if you've been here for Body's talk, a couple of talks beforehand, this kind of ties back into what they discovered, what they did for the city of Reykjavik. So we did this for a local county council, and these are a couple of data about the county council, about over 200,000 people in the county council, half of them from a professional, managerial, and technical background, so really educated people in that area, high-level broadband connectivity above the country kind of average, about 30K unique visitors per month. So we worked with them previously on a couple of smaller projects, and then we dive into the big, chunky digital platform that was going to transform the way they communicate with their citizens. Brilliant. It's exactly what we wanted, right? So here's a quote I really love, and I'll let you read it, but I just want to point towards, you know, we're sitting on top of 2 million parts, all built by the lowest bidder on a government contract, right? So if you're working with government, then this phrase will resonate with you, and it resonates with us on a daily basis. So how does a government contract happen, right? So you have the local government having a problem, identifying a problem. And how do they identify the problem? Well, they look usually to the neighbor. So they see that the neighbor county council actually have a new website. So they identify the problem. We have an old one, they have a new one. So essentially, the problem is for us to get a new one, right? So that's the solution to a very simple problem. And you're wondering, so what does that have to do with this, with sending people in space? And I'm telling you, it's probably the same conversation. I imagine it in the Oval Office. So what happened? Well, the Russians sent people in the space. Well, we're going to send them to the moon. So the problem, the solution. And this is how it kind of usually works in that space. There's no real research that backs up an initiative like let's build a new digital platform to communicate with our citizens. Yeah, this is how it happens, right? So what happens from there is that they need to put a tender out, right? And the tender usually describes exactly how the solution looks like. We don't really understand the solution or the problem, but we definitely understand the solution. And the solution is usually built by looking at other county council websites or local government websites, taking all of their features and trying to plug them into your new platform so you can brag in front of all of them that your website is better than theirs. So I suppose from there, what happens is you put a tender out, and then you have the lowest bidder coming in to deliver the solution. And if the contract is made on building a website, the expectations are not. They pay for a website, but they expect a rocket, right? That's what they expect. Everyone, when they put a tender out, want the best possible solution. They want the rocket. So what I'm going to present today is I'm going to tell you how to build that rocket as the lowest bidder on a government contract. No, I'm not. Because I have absolutely no idea on how to build a rocket, and let's face it, building a website has nothing to do with rocket science. It's not rocket science. Still, there are a few things that we've learned during that process. And even if it's highly politicized and highly hierarchical, you still learn a few things along the way. So how do you deal with a government contract? Well, the first thing that you do when you're in the door is you challenge everything that has been put into that tender document. And this is what we're trying to do every time when we go into a government contract. What we're trying to point out is the fact that if we don't understand who's going to use this, how can we build a solution that is going to respond to the problems that the users are going to have? So, you know, customer center is very hyped, I suppose. It's a term that everyone uses, but what does that mean? It means that you need to shake up a bit of an understanding. You need to redefine the problem space to be able to come up with a solution that's actually going to respond to real problem, real user problems. So how do we do that, right? So the first thing we do is we define a set of project goals. Why do we define the project goals? Well, when you define goals, people come into the room with their best intentions, right? There's nothing on the table yet. There's not a discussion around features. There's not a discussion around what you should include or you shouldn't if you need to share on Facebook or Twitter. It's about what are you trying to achieve. So from that perspective, you can get people's best intentions for the users. And from there, the next step is to align everything else to the project goals. So if you have project goals that are going to bring value to your customers, you can bring them back to that defined project goals every time you discuss a feature, every time you discuss functionality, every time you debate within the project on how you're going to do this or the other. Because if it doesn't align to your best intentions, which is the set of goals, is not going to be part of the actual scope. So setting project goals is the best way to kind of drive people back to the best intentions. And this is just an example of what we did for the county council. In this case, we're trying to get to a citizen-centered platform. We wanted to be modern. We wanted to be highly visual, which was kind of a step away from what county council usually do. It's usually text intensive. And we tried to look at the other side of the fence as well. Who's going to manage the content on that? Because a website without the content is just a shell. Who's going to put that content, try to take care of the other side of the fence, and then try to have a goal that was actually driving efficiency and decrease the number of calls. So the project goals, and then from there, the next thing to shake up and kind of reestablish things in terms of customer center was to look at research. Right? It's very hard to come into a government contract and say, have you done your research? Or is it just the neighbor's thing? And usually you can do a few things that will give you enough insight to get to a point where you can have a set of assumptions and then start testing as you develop. So some customer surveys revealed a few key pain points, and it wasn't very hard. You can see them with a few customers. You could actually see a list of pain points that you need to address quickly. Popular content, you can get that from website analytics, dive a bit into that, and then talk to the people who talk to the people, right? So you go to customer calls, you go to the customer center, and talk to these guys that actually face the inquiries on a daily basis, and you understand what problems people have. From there, we kind of trying to dive deeper and actually try to interview people and see how they interact with the service that is offered by the county council. And from there, we're trying to sketch some assumptions around user personas and use that as a start base for designing some solutions. The product persona is a quick exercise that you can do to gather all your assumptions and all your secondary research that you have previously, and that will allow you to kind of kickstart the rest of the project and put the validation and the testing a bit later in the process. Everything's based on research, though, so gather your secondary research and then start from there. Onboard stakeholders. This is a very, very big one, and I'm just going back to Buddy's talk a couple of hours back now, where she was saying, people in the county councils, in the government, they don't talk to each other across departments, right? So if your project is managed by the IT or the communications department, they don't really talk to the other ones. So what we wanted from the very beginning was to get these people to talk to each other. So we were trying to establish a team that is cross-departmental and bring them in together, because they need to understand the problems that different sections, different sectors in the same organization have. Otherwise, you can talk to one department, and the problems that they will serve you, they'll be skewed towards their understanding of the environment. And secondly, find a project sponsor. Really, really important, because when the rubber hits the ground, you'll need someone to actually stand for you within the organization. Where you're trying to take away a feature that someone in the management has put in, unless you have a sponsor, a project sponsor that will fight for you, you'll have to put that in, even if it has absolutely no use for no user. So interviews across departments, talk to them, understand how the organization is structured. And I suppose that's very important, because usually when you go to a county council website, what you have is a reflection of how the organization is structured, and not really services that people are looking for, right? So you see exactly departments, and then you need to go to a department and then find the information within the department. That has or can have nothing to do with actually the service that you need. The service that you need might not be even in the department that you expect to provide that service. So understanding how the organization is structured, and then think about the research that you have gotten, and understanding how users think about features are going to help you here. Okay, I need to speed through this now. So be aware of legacy systems. When you land into an organization, they'll have a multitude of systems. There won't be just one in place. There'll be millions. You need to decide very early on how these systems are going to talk to each other. So when we landed this project, I suppose we already had a few other small bits of projects that we have had in place. So we knew exactly how these are going to communicate. But we had to think about the other systems that they have in place and how do we integrate or migrate or link to, right? So that's understanding the technical context is an important one. Pick your battles. Two things here. There are battles worth winning and there are battles worth fighting. What's the difference? Well, sometimes you need to fight a battle to put an emphasis on an argument. But actually, at the end of the day, lose it because you don't really want to put aside or to pull aside from you the project sponsor. And this comes back from a feedback that we got in one of the retrospectives with our clients, where one of the stakeholders felt that her voice in the project wasn't heard. Everything she was suggesting was completely rejected out of the bat. So sometimes you just need to add something or to allow people to have their voices heard in the project. And that will allow you to fight other battles that there's no compromise. You can't make any compromise there because you're actually compromising the users. So that's a very important one. Content creation and revision, make it your #1 priority. If you can start content audit, if you can start content creation before start the project, it'd be brilliant. It takes forever, and you need to involve a lot of people. So we did an audit. We realized there were loads of problems. It was a maze, an alphabetized kind of type of navigation where you go from A to B to so on and so forth to find the service. And it's fine when you're looking for parks because that's in P, but we're looking for a dog license. Where is that? In a dog for D, and a D for dog, or L for license. Well, it's actually an E for environment because that's where the service sits. So it makes absolutely no sense. And then we audited the process, how they publish content. That was another mess because it was a complete bottleneck around their IT department that was collecting information and then put it on the website because they were the only ones understanding the structure of the website. So what we decided to do was to transform the content creators in content editors. Allow people that actually write the content to publish it on the website. And just put a few workflows in place to make sure that everything's streamlined. And then I mentioned this before, but very, very important was to understand the perception of the people of the services that are offered by the local government. And the way we wanted to present the content was not the way the organization was structured, but we wanted to present it in a way that they perceive it as being offered to them in terms of services. So we double tagged the entire content for people who are going to edit the content to understand where they need to publish things. And then that content was automatically published in the correct service for people who read the content to understand how it is presented to them. This was majorly important, by the way. So we streamlined the entire process, used content editors to actually publish that content online as editors on the platform. And from that perspective, Drupal made it really easy, made it possible. Just a small little image from a session on information architecture and how we kind of collaborated to get things in place, and we were matching departments against services, and it was a fun workshop. Manage expectation. Very, very important. So, you know you're paid to deliver a digital platform, but people expect a rocket. How do you get up to their expectations? How do you manage that? And the way we do it is with the bulletproof process. If you define the process from the very beginning, they'll know exactly what the next step is. They'll know exactly what will happen next, and they'll have the comfort that at the end of the day, they'll have a process that delivers a best-in-class solution. Agile, not waterfall. I'm not going to go into a lot of details here, but there is a question, I suppose, that comes up. How does government and local government that loves fixed cost project work in an agile environment? And I suppose the only thing that we managed to take from there was the fact that working on a couple of smaller projects initially that were probably waterfall gave us a lot of clout internally and got the organization to trust us that when we engage in an agile process, we're going to deliver based on our expertise and not trying to get more money for what we deliver. They engaged in an agile process because they didn't want to compromise the vision of the project. And if they understood that if we got to the end of the budget and we had to deliver everything else, let's say, that was in the scope for free, we wouldn't do a great job. So they didn't want to end up in a situation like that. And also they wanted to have the comfort that internally, as a local government organization, they can keep a pace that is comfortable for them. So putting everything into a waterfall project wouldn't really make sense. And then something that we wanted was to stay away from ta-da moments, right? So go away for 6 months and then come back and present the rocket, or go away for 6 months, come with a scooter when the client expects a Porsche. It's a big difference. If they are coming with you on the journey, they'll stay with you at the end when you unveil the product. So just a very quick overview of the learnings that we had during the project. And with that, I thank you for your attention.